Hi. Innovation time. Time to chat about what it really takes to make something big and significant and sustainable happen. We've talked before in these videos about what innovation is. It's about getting a product or service to market and keeping there. It's also about re-engineering business processes, and it's about restructuring organizations to make them leaner, faster, smarter, better. So those are the kind of dynamics we're talking about. Most innovation is adapt. We see something, think, oh, we could do that, adapt it to our circumstances and apply it. And a study that my colleague Alan Cornford did a number of years ago, 2013-14, suggested that about 95% of all innovation was adapt. Just a small percentage is about breakthroughs, disruptive innovation. While a lot of the literature talks about disruption, it actually doesn't happen very often, especially with the structure of our economy, which is mainly about small and medium-sized enterprises, as you've seen. But what does it take to make this stuff happen? Well, for a number of years, I ran a large consulting company in the UK. And we always started with doing nothing. We got paid for it, so we thought it was great work. But the doing nothing was about really noticing, about paying attention, about really looking at what was and what was not going on in organizations. In a large retail company, for example, we noticed that the sizes of the goods on display, clothing goods, for example, men's shirts, were almost not the sizes of most of the shoppers coming to the store. And so you thought, oh, that's a nice shirt, I'd like that, but they don't have it in your size. What's the point? So we said if you're going to display something, you have to have it available in all the sizes that are most commonly sold in this store. So that changed the behavior of the store, but more importantly, significantly increased sales. Small thing came from noticing. Now, the other thing that I could tell you from 30 years of consulting is that most of the diagnosis offered to you by a client isn't the actual problem that you need to solve. So the example I've used before is that of Oracle Financial Services, Europe, the Middle East and Africa. The diagnosis was our staff are inefficient. We need higher productivity because it's taking too long to consolidate accounts from all these countries all over the Middle East, Europe and Africa. Our diagnosis was, first of all, you're looking at the wrong problem. And secondly, the problem you should be tackling is why do we have any accountants at all when we actually have powerful accounting systems that we sell to our clients. And so the basic story is we got them down from country-based accounting systems to a single system for the whole region. We reduced the number of staff from 1,800 to 410. We rehoused the whole operation in Dublin, which had a lower tax base, and we saved the company between $250 and $500 million. But that was because we saw something completely different from what the company understood its problem to be. And so essentially, the work of innovation is about being on a constant expedition to climb mountains. Trouble is, some of the mountains turn out to be valleys and you can quickly get lost. So that's what it takes to really get innovation to move. But the real thing I wanted to talk about today is the universities and colleges and their contribution to the innovation system. Now, federal governments and provincial governments have always been persuaded by these institutions that they're the engine of the new economy. And I would say not really. They're not unhelpful. They're actually quite important, but they are not an engine of the new economy because their preoccupation is invention. What they're not doing, and they're not doing well, at least here, is really thinking about problems from the market's point of view and a company's point of view or a healthcare system point of view and trying to work with them as partners to design what the challenge is that they're trying to solve. In other words, far too much of what universities and colleges do is to push innovation out rather than to pull problems in that they can then apply solutions to. And if that solution is one 80-year-old technology plus a 20-year-old technology solves that problem, that's all that's needed. We don't have to start by going back to the lab. Now, a number of years ago, a university polytechnic institution in this city asked me to look at the models of research and innovation in 80 polytechnics around the world. And essentially, there are three models. One is all profs are equal, off you go, do your best. And so faculty are king, they decide what research they want to do, and curiosity is driving a lot of that work. And that's very important. I don't want to belittle that because a lot of the Nobel Prizes that you'll see in medicine, in chemistry, in biology, in physics, and so on, come from a starting point of that kind of work. Indeed, a lot of the breakthroughs come from pioneers exploring boundaries through their research. So we should never stop that. But it's not a source of innovation that impacts the economy as a whole, generally. The second thing that we saw in some of the institutions was they decided to cluster their researchers around 10 or 12 capabilities: nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, robotics, genomics, applied engineering for bridge building, clean water, CO2 capture. So they build teams around these specialities and hope that those teams can create startups, create opportunities for partnerships, create kind of a capability mechanism to produce value in the system, in the economic system. What tends to happen is their real contribution isn't the inventions that they come up with, it's the creation of highly qualified people. The founders of BlackBerry, in a series of conversations we had with them, pointed out that the most innovative things that the Ontario universities did for them in the early days when they were creating a real empire was to produce greatly skilled and qualified people. The third kind of approach, and you see this in a small number of polytechnics and universities around the world, is that they say, look, you guys do whatever you want, your faculty, get on with it, but the institution puts its weight behind 3 or 4 things that they think, given where they're located, given the jurisdictional advantage they're trying to build, will make the most difference in the medium to long term to the economies and the social environment and the communities in which they live, work, and exist. And so they look for strategic partnerships with companies, they look for an outcome-based plan, and they pull problems from the sector that they then put teams to try and solve. In other words, rather than pushing technologies and ideas out, which is what the capability focusing mechanism does, they collect problems in and then solve them and push them out. So if you take Alberta as an example, we have huge possibilities for revolutionizing agriculture using smart technologies, particularly streamlining the production of things like cannabis, really reimagining the place of robotics in that whole process and in quality assurance through genomics. Tons of things that could be going on there. We have huge opportunities for CO2 capture and storage and converting CO2 into valuable goods. We have huge opportunities in smart construction, smart building. And those are just 3 examples. One of the projects I'm working on right now is to identify 4 or 5 of these things that the University of Alberta could create a focus around and really develop a new kind of enterprise trust or enterprise center that could powerfully enable some of those things to happen. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out in this short video is the work that Alan Cornford did. Now, Alan used to be Assistant Deputy Minister of Innovation in British Columbia, and then before that, he was highly involved in work analysing the way in which innovation systems functioned. And he pointed out that for every dollar of public money, it took $3 of private money to get something to market. But he also pointed out that if it was just public money, then an invention or an idea reaching the market cost about $22.5 million in 2015 money. Whereas if it was private money, they wouldn't spend that kind of money to get a product to market. It'd be more like $1.5 to $2 million. And so not all dollars are equal. That was one of his key points. His other key point, that there are a number of different variables that matter with innovation. One of them is cash. The other one is management. Key issue is the quality of innovation management as project management. And then the third thing is the presence of highly qualified people in that jurisdiction. So if you want to do kind of creative things around film and cinema, you go to India, you go to British Columbia, you go to parts of California and Oregon, but you don't go to Manitoba. But in Manitoba, they have other things that they are expert at and so on. So a lot of this is about understanding jurisdictional advantage, capability building, and focusing on what matters most to produce innovation outcomes. And that's my final point. When we did the reinvention of the Alberta Cancer Foundation investments, we shifted from funding researchers to funding outcomes. And I think that's the shift that you will see in the next 4 or 5 years in a number of Canadian innovation centres, saying, look, we're not just interested in pursuing interesting research, we're interested in making a difference. And you just take the work that was done on the COVID-19 vaccine, which I had yesterday, great news. I was very worried it was St. Patrick's Day. I thought I might turn green, but I didn't. But that development was saying we need a vaccine to solve this pandemic and we need it now. And so several teams were funded intensely against a specific set of criteria and outcome. And I think we've seen the results. In record time, new kinds of vaccines which work in new ways have been delivered that will actually see an end to the current public health restrictions. It won't get rid of the virus because that's going to be with us for a long, long time, but it will change the dynamics of public health. And it's that outcome-driven work that we need to see more of. So, hope you're having a good time finishing your projects, but our next topic is innovation. So I thought I'd set the scene. Have a great weekend.